good evening if you are in the US, and good morning if you are waking up to Sunday morning in India. This is Tanushri and her rights team. We today have Professor Reicha Tanwar with us, and we will be discussing as part of our Her Rights web series a few of very pertinent issues concerning gender and gender rights. So I will start by asking Richa ma'am to go ahead and give a quick introduction of herself. She has quite a background on this.
Hello, Tanushree, and I'm Professor Reicha Tanwar. I have been a former director of the Women's Studies Research Center of Kurukshetra University, a very big university in Haryana, India. And for the past, say, or nearly 30 years, my interest of work has been women's issues, especially regarding certain pertinent issues which have emerged in the past, say, 2 or 3 decades, and in North India. The declining sex ratio is one issue on which I have worked, done intensive field work and researched, trying to understand the problem. Domestic violence, violence against women, and especially sexual harassment of women at the workplace. I have worked and I have been part of the redressal mechanism for almost 20 years. And I've been part of committees of various institutions, organizations. I have also worked on the caste panchayats, basically based in North India, some states, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab, and so on. So these are some issues. And then I have done a lot of training. This is a program on which I have been pan-India in charge of, capacity building of women managers in higher education, because the numbers of women heading institutions are still very low across the world. So I have been part of this training series program, which I thought was extremely useful and very successful. And I have also focused a lot on Haryana and the northern region, Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, the neighboring states, to try and understand masculinity, to try and understand why these issues, despite development indicators going up, have still, emerged in the forefront.
Thank you, ma'am. And actually, that is very, very pertinent, and that's what we want to explore today. We wanted to start with what you mentioned about sexual discrimination at workplace. You have a wide plethora of areas where you have worked in. Talked about POSH that was getting implemented in India post Me Too, and we were comparing that against Vichaka guidelines, which was the previous, in absence of a law, previous guidelines that were there to prevent workplace sexual harassment. So I would like to start with asking you, ma'am, when I look at India, it's so diverse in so many layers. I was in India entire last summer. I looked into Bangalore, went to many big corporations, and then I tried to visit smaller cities in northern India and other parts and smaller industries. And I tried to see how implementation of POSH is being done, how they differ from each place to another, and then whether it's effective or not. So tell our audience a little bit about that, about your perspective on that.
I would like to go back. You will be able to understand the mindset of the society, the institutional mechanism in India, the state also, I would say. You see this case of Vishakha judgment, if you remember, it happened in 1997. And that also was when a public interest litigation was lodged by an NGO in Delhi, that we did not have any law to tackle sexual harassment at the workplace. And because we did not have a law, right from 1997 to 212 December, the law had been framed. I mean, there was a draft law. It had been passed by the houses, both the houses of parliament, but it was awaiting the president's nod. So look at the kind of commitment do we have and how sensitive we are to this very important issue. And it was only after the Nirbhay gang rape case which galvanized the public support, and we ultimately got this law in 2013. So that itself is a very big indicator. Now, when you talk about the law and the implementation of the law, you see, you must understand that although sexual harassment is actually a violation of women's rights to practice or to carry out any occupation, trade, or business under Article 19(1)(g) of the Indian Constitution, which includes the right to a safe environment free from harassment. But although it is laid down in the constitution, we still are not sensitive to this idea. Or maybe she had something to do with it. Or another important thing is that let us keep quiet, because the honor of the institution is at stake. The organization would suffer. And the usual response is, oh, the complaint is motivated. It is very likely there were some other issues. She was not performing well, she was not working well, so that is the reason for her complaint. So sexual norms often blame women for being the cause of harassment. Another thing is the power dynamics and the fear of job-related discrimination. You see, the victim feels that if she complains, she may lose her job. She may not be able to complete her PhD. It's likely she may get a bad appraisal. So, and also, you see, she may also, the fear of being stigmatized and marked as isolated.
Yeah.
So these are various issues which have emerged, I've seen over the years. And sometimes there is also no trust in the mechanism, the redressal mechanism. If you look at the law, what is the redressal mechanism? The mechanism is like this, that every organization which has more than a certain number of employees will have an internal committee, which would be the sexual harassment committee, prevention committee. And that would be part of the peers, the members of that organization. By and large, organizations would have such members on the committee who are pliable, who would be part of the system, and not really make a big noise about it. And if required, if a serious case does come across, and if the institution or if the heads of institutions or the powers that be wish that the case be scuttled or downplayed, they should be able to maneuver it. And the support is not available. That support the organization should be giving to the committees is sadly not available. Because sexual harassment is not only difficult to define, it is very difficult to unravel because of its social implications. Women very often are very scared to complain. Very few committees are effective that women have the courage and the conviction to come and complain, because they would feel that nothing would come out of it, and I know it would adversely affect our own image.
Yeah, very specific aspect that I wanted to ask you about these committees, right? So I did some through my studying. What I found was the main reason for Vishakha not being successful, or even one of the main complaints on POSH is if something is left to an internal committee, what you talked about, how to make sure that the committee is really the right and rightly equipped body to look into this. And one very interesting specific thing that stood out to me, maybe in the India context, is that there is the requirement that says there has to be a woman in the committee, and the woman preferably is someone who is sympathetic to women's causes, right? Now, this is a very interesting angle to me, because interestingly, this necessarily assumes that just because there is a woman on the committee, that person will be sympathetic to the victim and will do a fair job. And also, to me personally, I felt this definition of someone who is sympathetic to women's causes is very subjective. There is no good way of saying, okay, how do you define this? And what are your thoughts on that? I feel that many times I've seen that in India, or maybe in many nations, in deeply patriarchal societies, women are not necessarily equipped to be allies of other women.
See, there are two things to this. Tanushree, you are right to quite an extent. Now, who decides that the woman who is going to be part of the committee is actually gender sensitive? Women or men both? Who decides that? And I've seen that in most of the committees, you have women who are actually not gender sensitive. So you see, the law is not flawed in the sense that it presumed that if you put women heading these institutions, because it is mandatory that the committee should be headed by a woman, I think it was a very good idea if it was taken, literally and implemented like that. But it is not implemented, sadly. And it is not that the right women are not available. They are available. In every organization, you will have gender-sensitive women who are not available, but they are not suitable to the authorities. They would not be part of the committee. And we also have men, like you said, that men could be equally gender sensitive. Yes, but how many of them are picked up to be part of the committees? Because you see, it is who's going to appoint these committees? It has been left to the head of the organization, to the head of the institution. Now, the person who's heading the institution, both the head of the institution and the members are part of the society. So, how gender sensitive are they? How much would they like? Most organizations don't like troublesome women. They like the status quo to be maintained. So,
Yeah.
per se, it was not a bad idea to have a woman heading a committee, but having the right person, that is what is important.
Thank you. So I want to add that, posh or no posh, I work in corporate US. I don't think it's very different here either.
Right.
So one thing that so it seems like, right now the laws and the intents in India are correct. We obviously have the implementation problem, and this committee is being effective. You said that one of the aspects in your work you wanted to explore was what causes this masculinity or this patriarchy, or what is the root cause? Like there can
No,
be
no, no,
talk, social talk shows on that.
you're
What's the
absolutely
root?
right, Tanushree. This is the root of the problem. You see, we
Yeah.
have to understand how we are socialized, how our behavior is determined, what are families and what is society perpetuating, because that is where the root of the issue is. We have done a couple of field work studies on masculinity, the behavior of men, and what boys think, and what is the right behavior, how they should be talking, how they should be behaving. And let me tell you that despite education, despite employment of men and women both, the orthodox thinking, the very backward thinking, which I would say the retrograde thinking, that women are a second they have a second place in the family. They don't have a right to speak. They should be, quiet. They should be docile. They should be submissive. And those are the kind of behaviors that boys, even today, the youth, when you ask them that what kind of a girl would you like to for have in marriage, she should be educated, she should be smart, she should be independent also, they would say, economically, and she should be working, but she should be adaptable, she should be part of our family in the manner that she should understand that these are our values, our norms, and she should stick to them. And what I say, that matters most. And how dare she say no to anything? So that is the kind of notion even today.
Second topic that we wanted to explore with you. I do feel these are very connected because this Delhi boys locker room chat that got exposed and it created quite a noise. Personally, I felt that I was more surprised at people being surprised at the chat, if you will, just because to me, from what I had experienced or what I can logically see happening with even very educated men around me, I wasn't very surprised that, okay, this is how boys will chat at this age. Uh, you talked about the root cause of this. If I try to group them, I have thought that in India, boys are always raised to be the honor bearer or the protectors, or like, people who should be the stronger ones. They have to be the breadwinners. We are not very fair to our boys either. And that, I think, leads automatically to this, what you said, that means women are secondary, right? If these are the people
Definitely.
you have to take care of. So one, if I have to summarize this into 2 points, one would be women are secondary or weaker, and second would be they almost become objects, so then they're objectified then for sexual needs. So with all this combined, tell us a little bit about, like, this first problem of how we raise our boys. And you said you did a lot of field work. What role
When
women play in that?
yes, Tanushree. Let me take you back to my understanding of, the declining sex ratio, because that is where the root of the problem lies. When in a family it is argued, it is discussed that it is important to have a boy child, and if a it is detected that a girl is going to, a daughter is going to be born in the family will go to any extent to ensure that a girl is not born, and instead they give birth to a boy. And they will spend money, they will undergo tests, they will do what all medical termination of pregnancy, and everything goes into place. Now, when this is the understanding in the family that a girl child will be allowed to be born only if the family wants it, she does not have a right to life. It's only if the family wants it, and usually the family does not want a girl to be born. So, what is a girl? What is a woman? She's something, an object to be utilized by the boys, by the men. The understanding is this, that when a boy is the most important individual in the family, we can even kill a girl. So if she does not agree to what we say, we can throw acid to her, we can gang rape her, we can do domestic violence, all kinds of things. They all follow. That is the social, I mean, socialization is not something which is very, covert. It happens in a very silent manner. What children observe, what families do in house homes, how things are worked out, how, distribution of food, distribution of material wealth, everything is with that. If there is a family which has 5 acres of land, which is a small segment, and they have 5 sons, distribution of property will be 1 acre to each son, no problem at all. That is their right. If there is a family which has 100 acres of land, which is a rich family, and they have 1 son and 1 daughter, believe me, it will be just 100 acres to the son, not a single acre to the girl. They will just say that we have spent money on her dowry, on her marriage, on festivals we give her money, we go and take gifts for her, but not part of the property. Talk about property rights, I mean, I do that in most of my lectures. The responses that I get from educated university professionals, ma'am, maybe in your family you talk about property rights, girls in our families don't even want that. And when I say don't want it, it is their right. They don't have to want it, they have to be given. Boys don't have to be given, they don't ask for it. It comes to them automatically. Girl resists and she tries to ask for her right of the property, not her brother's right, her own right. She is stigmatized, she's outcasted, that she dared to ask for her right.
Ma'am, what I wanted to ask you is that if the origin of this discrimination lies in the fact that labor and therefore presumed higher physical capability of men to bear that brunt cause this problem, then how do we see as women are also working equally or have to work equally and the brain power becomes more important than a muscle power? Do you see things changing? What do you still see?
You see, women have started, going in for higher education, going in for very high technology-based jobs. They are working in all fields. They are earning very well. So this kind of change has occurred, no doubt. Families are supporting such, daughters for going in for jobs, even in far off places, sending them for higher education, supporting them for scholarships, everything. No doubt about that. That change has happened, but only it has to be with the family's consent within a particular caste group, a particular class, caste dimension is the most important thing. Then their sexuality is actually curtailed to such an extent that if a girl even today happens to get involved for marriage with someone out of her caste, below her caste, or not approved by the family, things take a very ugly turn. So we have this intervention of these caste panchayats, khap panchayats, who, we have things like honor killings, where they will even go to the extent of killing the girl, the daughter, or the boy with whom the daughter has got married, because the honor of the family has been compromised.
Here, I think we can maybe talk about these issues for again and again. What are some of the things you have seen have worked? I mean, obviously, it's impossible to define a solution space. It's probably a continuous work. What, if anything has worked, what do you think it is?
It's a number of things that are being done, can be done. You see, like we thought that the moment girls started getting educated, starting getting jobs, were economically independent, things would change. But sadly, that has not happened. I mean, the indicator is a falling sex ratio. So changing the mindset, trying to educate people And at the same time, I think the most important thing is the violence against women. That definitely has to be dealt with, because when during the course of our fieldwork, when you talk to women, they say it is so difficult, it is impossible to safeguard your girl child. She has to go to school, she has to go to college, and she has to get married. So the marital home, even if you give a good dowry, you don't know how they're going to behave with my daughter. And so it's better that I don't give birth to a girl child. Therefore, when you talk about, everything is kind of interconnected, whether it is sexual harassment, whether it is the safety security of the girl child, and whether it is a system which has to respond very well. When you know that your daughter is going to be safe, she's going to be protected at her workplace, at the place of her study, in her marital home, things would change. So it's a very complex process. The state has to respond, families have to respond, and so on.
What I have been seeing on one front is, and again, for the context of my book, as I had mentioned, I had looked into this. 80s and 90s Bollywood was really, really going downhill for the health of, gender safety in India. They were consistently, eroticizing all sorts of assault and harmful behavior towards women, and describing this as very toxic love, which was even in very, very recent, relatively recent movies and serials, and those kind of masculinity or forcing women was shown as the right thing to do in love. And recently, videos that have come out of Delhi and Haryana, a lot of them have gone viral, where schoolboys are interviewed. They kind of believe that, and where don't have a good way of getting some understanding of what is right kind of sexual interaction and consent and all of that talked about in your family. This Bollywood cannot influence cannot be erased. But I have started seeing in YouTube and in a lot of social media, and even in how Bollywood is putting out some stuff, that there is a little bit of eyebrows that are getting raised at that, and something that obviously there are still a lot of slapstick comedies and a lot of songs that are coming out. uh, do you think that, and this is a difficult question, do you think that there is a responsibility there, or do you think, how big do you think this is a factor of what popular media shows in India, as love or
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. The media has a huge impact. It has a huge impact. I mean, I do, although it may sound very, backward and retrograde, the connectivity, the net connectivity that we have in India now, and the smartphone that every child, every 14, 12-year-old child has in the hand, and the access to pornographic material is also one reason for the increase in sexual crime against women in India. The media has to owe responsibility, because that is, I think, one medium which really leaves a lot of impact, whether it is films, television shows, chat groups and whatnot. They really leave a lot of impact. And when you have immature minds looking at things which are not supposed to be seen, you can understand what happens. So I think that we need to have some, I don't talk about moral policing, but I do say that we have to have responsible media. It's very dangerous. I cannot
Yeah.
address this issue more than I can say
Yeah.
this.
See, ma'am, if I may add, I think that there is also this alternate view about, lack of access to sexual content or lack of sexual freedom is the cause. But I think I agree to what you are saying, in the sense that what makes it a little bit more complicated for India right now is, if we are in the middle of a change or towards the transformation curve, we still haven't really established consent as a concept, right? Because of all the things we talked about, that the woman really being lesser as an object, not viewed as something that is a wish. I think that probably causes a combination of, access to sexual content, probably where you could find a way to respect the partner and seek consensual modes to that, but woman sexuality being suppressed and then they being considered lesser leads to probably a situation where is no other way than reverting to sexual violence for immature minds who are exposed
I
to this.
I agree with what you're
So
saying. it's a very complex situation at the moment, and maybe somehow when we have a more mature society and we have more liberal norms, things would probably change. But right now, it doesn't seem like that.
Yep. Thank you, ma'am, very much for your time. So, for everyone who is listening, we will bring Richa Tanwar back again, and we will talk specifically about her work in the field of declining sex ratio and female infanticide in northern India. We think that's of great value and should be celebrated. And thank you all for listening.